Allina Health is proud to support your Loons as the official healthcare provider of Minnesota United. Every day, we provide expert care to keep the team in top form on match day. All across Minnesota and western Wisconsin, you can find the same dedicated providers just a short drive away. It's expert care when and how you need it. Schedule your visit at allinahealth.org today. Allina Health, all together better. Welcome back to the Sound of the Loons podcast, brought to you by Allina Health. I am your host, Zarek Valentine, and this is arguably the most excited I've ever been for one of the podcasts this year. We've done over 40 or something, but we finally have the man, the myth, the legend, the one and only Dennis Lawrence. Welcome to the podcast.
See, thank you for having me.
It's
a pleasure to be here today.
Thank you so much. So we have a lot of things to cover. One thing I didn't know was your footballing history dating way back throughout time, as some would say. And it was one of these things where the more I got to know about your journey, even more respect I had for you. So let's go back to the beginning. Growing up as a boy in Trinidad, where'd you find your love for football? Was it played on the streets? Was it in your family? Was it your dad, your brother, or anything like that? Or how'd you develop your love for football?
Yeah, actually, growing up in Trinidad, we played a lot of street soccer, street football. That's what I know it as, football. And there was always the older guys. We would call it the big man sweat.
Yeah.
And it was simply too many goals in the middle of the streets. And you'll have 3-4 different teams. And it was like three aside and first goal wins and things like that. And I used to watch a lot of that as a kid. And where the two goals were placed, one of the goals were lower down from my house. So I would sit on my wall for my house and I'd just be dying for somebody to take a shot and miss the goal so I can jump off the wall and just fetch the ball back to them. And I think it's just basically that's where it all started from. We're looking out through the windows and seeing the bigger guys playing and wanting to be involved in football. And I just got the taste for it from there. And then basically it graduated to where then eventually I wasn't chasing the ball. I was invited to play in the games. I was on a team and it just excelled from there. So that I would probably say is where it all started from.
Just the street, just the boys playing.
Street, watch the boys playing in the streets, and that was it.
No cricket for you? Because I still got to learn the rules.
Well, this is the thing. So obviously Trinidad and Tobago, we're a multicultural society. Yeah. And it was strange when I was growing up, sports was seasonal. Yeah. Because obviously the West Indies was a massive thing, still are. I mean, we're struggling a bit at the moment, but basketball, everything, we were involved in it. So we actually had seasonal sports. We would have basketball season, football season, cricket season, and then it would just revert the rest of sports, you know what I mean? So I played a bit of everything. And when you look today, I think a lot of the players in the modern game today can actually benefit from things like that, because where you look at the academies now, where they do a lot of, they call it ABCs, ability, balance, coordination. Yeah. I got those from being involved in all different aspects of sports. So that's more or less the history of my sporting background.
Yeah, it's funny because you mentioned the movements, and we talked about that upstairs and if there's any real science behind that. But I played basketball growing up. I was terrible. I wanted to be like Allen Iverson, which is why I wore number 3. And at recess, I remember playing just football because that was what we played. Yeah. So you think there was a correlation between the science of the movements, even if you're not thinking about it, and just being healthier and translating to football?
Oh, definite. I mean, I grew up, I climbed trees, across bridges. Yeah. I jumped on stones to get across the river to the next side. So obviously there is an element of development of these scientific things that they do in gyms. So from my generation, that's how you develop these things, even though you weren't thinking about it then. Yeah. So there is definitely a place for it, but obviously now it's been replaced with the modern technology now, and everything's very much coordinated and organized and detailed. But without a shadow of a doubt, it was definitely a part of my development coming through.
And then we talk about development. You grew up, you obviously got the invite to play with the boys. You're in the street. And then I remember at some point, and if I'm not mistaken, I think it's still correlated, but the military in Trinidad to the football teams are still directly intertwined, or they were at some point. Can you take us down the history of that? Because I remember you were saying, no, I was in the military, and you think everyone should do military service, because we talked about Sung Bin when he did it, and Ho Young and Rob, and you had to do your own. So just take us into how the military shaped you and what you think the youth could benefit from your experiences.
Yeah, well, we when I was growing up, there was no professional league.
Yeah,
we had something called minor leagues. There was a lot of minor leagues where you would basically just go and play for a team and somebody pay you $100. So I played a lot of minor leagues until eventually evolving into club football. But we had like the East Zone, the West Zone, the North Zone, that type of thing. So I got involved in that. And the first actual club that I played for was a club by the name of Batara Ball Players. And that was the first organized football team that I played for under a coach. So from there, then led to me joining my first semi-professional club, which is a club by the name of Caledonia IA. And I have to speak about this because during that period with Caledonia IA, that was the making of my football career, I would probably say, apart from the school football that I played, etc. And the reason for that is because there was the owner of that club, she was the sponsor, and it was a Chinese lady by the name of Miss Elizabeth Shi. And I was 18 going on 19 at the time. I not too long left school. I wasn't doing anything really. And she gave me my first job in life. And it was a job in a supermarket. And she literally took me under her wing as I was her son. And she gave me the opportunity to work in the supermarket. So I never actually got paid to play football. I was working in the supermarket. But she always pushed me. Apart from, obviously, I had influences in the village. I had a guy by the name of Loons. I remember going to school and I had a older guy by the name of Mr. Govaya. They always pushed me, but she was the one that really, really pushed behind it. And then from that, it then went on to, I was playing for Caledonia, and then the Army team was the most successful and powerful team in Trinidad and Tobago. And we then transitioned from a semi-professional league to a professional league. And I then went from Caledonia to join the Army. But at the time, I didn't join the Army to be a professional footballer. You join the Army to become a soldier.
Of course.
So the football was only an extracurricular activity on the side you can do while you're in the Army. So I wasn't in the Army to play football. I was in the Army to be a soldier. So I was a soldier for 4.5 years. But during that period, it molded me to become a man. Because I think my daughter born in 1997. I joined the Army in 1996. So all of a sudden, you've got responsibility. You're getting a paycheck coming in every month. You had to learn responsibility. But one of the best things as well, the discipline that it requires to be a soldier is incredible. And I'm talking of something as simple. You were numbered off in the Army. You would be 1 and I would be 2. If your number was 1 and I was 2, you are now my senior. And you basically had the authority to give me an order. And I had to follow the order. So simple things like having to salute your senior commanders is a respectful thing. Where you look at the modern generation for young players, for players to be able to say good morning to each other. So that was a sign of respect. And it molds you in a particular way that you become respectful. And you understand the demands of working. I used to work night shift because obviously when you're doing your duties at night, you work 2 hours on, 4 hours off. So it's a real discipline structure, and it takes you into your life because all of a sudden now you have to learn responsibility. You have to learn to manage your time. You have to learn to manage your money. You have to learn to manage your family. And it helps you to become a better human being. So I've found it really, really beneficial for me. And that's the reason why when we're having the conversation, I told you the younger generation today, they would benefit from it.
The postseason is here and your Loons are ready to fly. Our official playoff hub has everything from matchup details to ticketing links and even upcoming community events, so you can stay in the loop on all things playoffs. Gear up and get ready to cheer the black and blue all the way to victory. Visit the MNUFC app or MNUFC.com for more info. Yeah, so during, I mean, that's incredible. I never did any military time, but I was a part of a boarding school that had pretty strict rules where, you know, if you didn't make your bed in the morning, you'd get a strike. 3 strikes, you get detention. So I think those types of things do breed a certain level of discipline to where when you do get to professional ranks, you have a certain level of understanding what the demands are. And the coaches give those demands and the players try their best to follow those. And so you were saying during this time, the football was a byproduct of being in the military. And ultimately, your footballing talents took you overseas. At what point did you realize, I might be pretty good at this thing and I might be able to make a career outside of the Army to play? Was that during your time there? Was there a scout? Was there someone who brought you from Trinidad to Europe, or how did that process come about?
And this is a really interesting part because this is what worked for me at the time. I never one day woke up and said to myself, I want to become a professional footballer. I just enjoyed playing football. I love the sport. I love it as an entertainment thing. So I just wanted to be the best footballer that I can be. And along the way, it kind of took my journey. So I just wanted to be the best. I wanted to play for my country at some point because I remember going and watching games in our national stadium, watching our national team. They were like my heroes. And what then happened is I then had a really rich period in my career when I was probably around, I'd probably say between 19 to 23. I was on fire, if you want to say that way. And during that period, I started to get a bit more recognition from national team coaches, from things like that. And a lot of credit goes to people like Dwight York and Shaka Hislop and Sturgeon and them because they were the pioneers that first went abroad. And it then made the pathway for families, parents to be able to understand that football can actually lead to success.
Of course.
Because when I was growing up, there was no way I was going to tell my parents I want to be a professional footballer because there was no pathway. There was no becoming a multimillionaire or earning a living through football because we didn't have that. But when Dwight and Stern and these guys went abroad, then all of a sudden, it started to open up the eyes of parents that hang on. So then all of a sudden, my parents started to take a bit more interest because prior to those periods, football was a non...
It was a hobby.
Yeah, it was a hobby. And it was a hobby that my parents saw as an obstruction to me becoming somebody. So I would get a lot of trouble for playing football. So then eventually what happens is you go to the Defence Force team, which was the most powerful team in Trinidad and Tobago, and probably still is today. They've won CONCACAF championships, etc. And I'm playing in this team. And I went in there, and obviously when I went in, there was a lot of top players, local players playing for the club. And I managed to break into that team very early. I think in my first season, we won the Triple Crown, etc. And during this period, I then embarked in being involved with the Trinidad and Tobago national senior team and things. So the recognition is coming, your name's on the map. And we then had a goalkeeper by the name of Clayton Ince. He went to the UK on trial. And during that period, he was successful in the trial, blah, blah, blah. And then they found out that he needed to get something called a work permit. And at that point, nobody knew what is on a work permit. So Joey Jones, who was an absolute legend of Wrexham, he then said to Clayton Ince, my cousin is an agent. He might have an idea. So the phone call went in, blah, blah, blah. And Clayton Ince met this agent in England by the name of Mike Berry. Really, really lovely guy. Still speak to him today. And he then met Clayton. He tried to help him out in the UK. And he then asked Clayton a very simple question. Where are you from? So Clayton said, I'm from Trinidad and Tobago. And he was like, where is that? He said, hey, it's in the Caribbean right next to Barbados. And the conversation was like about players, how many players. And Clayton was like, no, we got a lot of good players. And fair play to him, he took it upon himself and he left the UK and he flew over to Trinidad. And he just came there and watched the league and he just saw the players, saw the potential. And I met him through that way. And from there, it basically took off from there. I met Mike Berry and the attention playing with the national team. I think my first trial, I went to Newcastle United under Bobby Robson. And it was an incredible experience for this young boy coming up from Trinidad and Tobago. And then the last bit was I went to trial in Newcastle. It went really well. I was asked to come back for a further 7 days. Whilst I went back to Trinidad, then my agent, Mike at the time, he then rang me and he said to me, look, you've got two choices. You can go back to Newcastle or you can go on a trial at Bolton Wanderers. Sam Allardyce was the manager.
Yeah.
So I took the chance to go back to Bolton. So I went to Bolton in trial and I played in a trial game. And this is a funny story, see. So at the end of the trial game, we played Wigan.
Yeah.
In it's like a friendly game.
Yeah, of course.
A reserve team game it was called at the time. And I was marking the striker, strong, really fast guy. And during the game, he said to me, please, can you let me score? I'm on trial. Right?
Yeah.
And as he's saying that to me, I'm saying to him, I can't do that because I'm on trial as well. So we had a bit of a laugh about it. And I didn't realize at the time, it was actually Jimmy Floyd's Hasselbank brother.
Ah.
So I had no idea, but it was just interesting us having that conversation. Anyway, at the end of the trial, we were leaving the training ground to go back to the hotel, and my agent got a call from Sam Allardyce to come back in the office. He went in, and he came back out from the car, and he went, right, I've got 2 good news for you. So I'm excited now, and he says, Bolton wants to sign you on a deal.
Yeah.
The manager said, look, you're a bit raw, but he thinks he can put you in the reserves and you'll come through in the end. He said, but the other one is, Wrexham wants to sign you. Now, at the time when Wrexham wanted to sign me, there was 2 other Trinidadians that were already at Wrexham.
Yeah.
So when he gave me the option, I went, no, I want to go to Wrexham.
Yeah.
And Wrexham were playing in a division below. And from there, I went to Wrexham. And, you know, the opportunity to play was more important for me than somebody saying, look, I'll stick in the reserve. No, whether or not that was the right decision,
of course,
I've got no idea, but it worked for me.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what happened.
That's awesome. This is the first time I'm hearing about this entire journey because we've heard bits and pieces of it. And, you know, it's funny because Wrexham is where they're at now, right? The television, but you were there way before a lot of that. And you played over 100+ games with the club and eventually went to Swansea and, you know, had a really successful stint in Europe that I don't think that a lot of players, especially from CONCACAF, don't have. A lot of players from that don't have. And part of that success stemmed from, you know, you going abroad, doing well, to playing in a World Cup. Yeah. What was that like? Especially, you talked about the meaning that it is to play for your national team, to go to a World Cup, to, you know, to represent your flag on the grandest scale. What did that mean to you to be the boy hoping to get called up on the streets, to go into the military, to have your hobby turn into your living, to then representing your country? I mean, that has to be the best. I mean,
it's an incredible feeling, especially for a country like mine. 1.3 million people, I think we are as a population. And at the time when we qualified, we were the smallest nation ever to qualify until Iceland did it. And for us, for me personally, so in 1989, and you probably would know the history about this, we were in the hex to qualify for the Italy World Cup.
Yep.
And our last game was against the United States of America. And all we needed was 1 point, and we would have qualified for our first and ever World Cup.
Yeah.
I think I might have been around 14 years at that time.
Yeah.
And I remember going to, because I couldn't get a ticket to go into the National Stadium to see the game.
Yeah.
But they had put up this big screen TV in the Oval, which is the cricket ground.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad was working in the Oval. So he took me, and I remember being in the Oval. And the United States of America beat us 1-0. Paul Caligiuri scored a goal from over 40 yards.
Yeah.
Loved the goalkeeper. And I cried. Honestly, I cried because our country, for us, that was one of our biggest opportunities lost. So then to be able to come in 2005 and to be able to be part of a group that we actually then qualified for our first senior World Cup, because we had qualified for junior World Cups before, but we've never qualified for senior one. It was an incredible achievement for our country. It was an incredible achievement for us as players. Mm-hmm. It gave us a sense of pride, because prior to that, people literally saw Trinidad and Tobago football team as a banana republic.
Yeah.
And I remember being heckled in a funny way back then, like, you know, when we would go for internationals, we're going home and lying on the beach and things like that.
Yeah, of course.
So when we actually did it, it was like, right, there we go. Here we go. Now we can put our country on the map in terms of football. So it was an absolutely incredible achievement, first and foremost, for Trinidad and Tobago as a country, and then for the group of players, not just the ones that made the final 23, but the players that would involve getting us there. And to then be able to actually take part in the World Cup. And I'm so proud for the likes of Boxy at the moment, the likes of Dane at the moment, the likes of all our internationals who are going to have the opportunity to be there. It is something that you cannot replicate.
Yeah.
And I would love it for every footballer to be able to, because it is the pinnacle.
Of course.
It is the elite of the elite. And to be able to stand there in our first game against Sweden and to be able to hear our national anthem play, it was emotional. And it's something that will probably be with me for the rest of my life, because it was a really, really pleasing feeling to be part of that group.
Yeah, I can only imagine. You know, you see, it's funny because a lot of players and, you know, the national anthem plays and they get tears in their eyes. They're saying, oh, how could you describe? But I you know, having represented Puerto Rico and knowing the fight and knowing the small island kind of feel, I think I can only imagine the emotion that you would feel. Then you still got to go play the game. Then you still got to strap up your boots.
There you go. And you end up down to 10 men in your first game and you're thinking, yeah, we're in trouble.
And so we're going to fast forward a little bit. I can only imagine what that feeling's like. And I'm super excited for our players that we have. And then from being a player, you know, you turned into an assistant coach working under Roberto Martinez after you'd spent time, I think, at Wigan. And then at a different point, you got the honor to coach the national team. And what some of the fans may or may not realize is back in 2017, when the U.S. was qualifying for the World Cup, there was a very famous game in Trinidad that the U.S. ended up losing that match. And who was the manager on that sidelines? It was none other than Dennis. And what was it like? Was it a full circle moment to have played for the national team and then just have been able to have the honor to manage it as well?
Yeah, I think that's probably the next biggest honor you can have, to be able to represent the country in that context, in that, given that responsibility to lead your country. But I think for me, it was part of my journey in coaching. It was part of the unknowns of getting involved in something that, yes, you've been involved working under Roberto for a period of time. You never know what it is like until you become the head coach. You have an idea, you sit on the outside and you think, but it was a really, really great experience for me. It was one, for me, I took it more as giving back to my country more than being a head coach. It was more about giving back. I wanted to go back and try and pass on the knowledge that I've gained from a time in coaching in the UK and being able to present something and giving Trinidad and Tobago the opportunity to try and accomplish what we accomplished in 2005. But you speak about the US game, and I love the US as a country, but I hated them on that day.
Of course.
So to be able to accomplish what we did on that November game, it was an absolute sign of relief for me to be able to get that 1989 feeling off of not just my back, but the amount of phone calls I got from some of the ex-players who were involved in that game in 1989. To be able to say to me, thank you very much. Yeah. Because it's been something that's been haunting us for years. Yeah. That we almost had it. And I mean, it sounds crazy, but we qualified in 2005. But sometimes you even get the impression people speak about 1989 more than us actually because it was that much of a stigma on our back. So when that happened in that period for us to be able to knock the mighty US out and make sure they didn't qualify for that 2018, it was an incredible achievement, and one that, and I say this with no ill respect whatsoever, but for us as a country, we needed that to be able to finally be able to move on from that 1989 situation.
Of course, and I think, you know, when it comes to moving on from 1989 or just keeping up with the big boys, right? You always want to show we can do this, and there's been a lot of Trinidadians come through MLS. I played in Portland, as you know, and as the people listening knows, and I had a lot of battles on my right side, their left side with Jovan Jones over the course of the years. What a player he was. And of course, none other than Kevin Molino played here that are so close and near and dear to the Minnesota fans. And I know we could sit here and talk all day. I really appreciate you taking the time. We had a meeting, but really quickly, best of 3 series against Seattle. You talk about your coaching journey, and now your journey takes you to this weekend. We have a blackout, 3:00 kickoff on Saturday. What would you like to see from the boys going into this make or break game against Seattle here in the conference quarterfinals?
Well, we have to be dialed in. I think this 3-game series, it's unique because prior to coming to the US, I've never been involved in these type of things. And to play one team 3 times, by the time you get to this 3rd game now, it's all about who's going to be better doing what they are good at.
Yep.
Because they've showed their hand in the last game, we probably showed ours in the 1st game. So now it's all about being dialed in to do the things that got us to this point. So we need to be dialed in. We need to be really focused, and we need to show a sign of desperation that we want to be the ones to get over that line in that last hurdle. So I think if we do those things really well, it gives us a really, really good chance. And I've got the belief in the players that after what happened in our game on Monday night, that we've desperately got that fire in our stomachs to try and be the ones to get over that line.
Yep. And I couldn't have said it better myself. I know that the staff and the players are doing their best to prepare. And the last thing we'll need is a packed house and a blackout on a Saturday, which I know, having some of the best fans in MLS behind our back, puts us in a really good spot going forward. But thank you very much for coming on to this week's episode of the Sound of Loons podcast. I could sit here and ask you questions all day, but I know we have a meeting to get to. We got things to take care of. But thank you so much, Dennis, for coming on. We really appreciate it. And it's been awesome getting to know your story and how much of an influence you've had on the group, and even personally, how much I've learned from you over our time of working together. I could write a book, and maybe I will one of these days. But thank you so much for coming on.
See, it's been a pleasure, and thank you for having me.
Thank you.